Bitcoin is this very weird thing. If you confront it sincerely, you're forced to confront every tribe you've ever belonged in your life. Most of them are utterly terrified of Bitcoin. The major players in the world know that the fiat system is going to collapse eventually. It's like a get your popcorn ready situation. It's like the thing I'm most excited about is like what's going to happen with the global monetary system in the next few years. $1 million of Bitcoin is a 21 trillion market cap. That's a low ball estimate for sure.
Is there anything else that Bitcoiners might be missing that maybe they're a blind eye to?
Wait, where do I start?
Today's guest is someone that I've been wanting to talk to for a while. Mike Maloney quite literally changed my life with the hidden secrets of money over the last 10, 15 years and opened my eyes to how the entire financial system actually worked. And now Alan Hibbard here with us today is someone I'm grateful to call a friend, is carrying that torch forward and helping the world wake up with his new series with the hidden secrets of value. And we're going to talk a little bit about that here today. Bitcoin, sound money, gold and silver, and the unstoppable monetary transition, and how this is shaping the next generation of money. And today we're going to dig into all that. So Alan, thank you so much for joining us here today.
Hey, Brandon, thank you so much for having me. Pleasure to be here.
For anyone that has not seen any of you or Mike's work, I highly suggest right off the bat to go check it out. After this, we'll link to some of it in here. Just incredible work. For anyone listening to this, it probably knows a bit of my story and in just how I got into all of this and what I'm doing here today. So I would love your story of just how you were red pilled, orange pilled, and just, gold and silver pilled. I guess we'll put that in the red pilled camp, I guess, for now. But what really started to click and change for you and some of those aha moments where you realize, hey, we're going the wrong direction and there's something that we need to fix here?
Yeah, my story is like a lot of little moments that sort of all piled up. And basically just as a teenager, I started wondering like why there are so many rich families and why there are so many poor families. And when I was 18, when I was 18, a friend in college handed me a book. And he said, read this. And I looked at it. It said, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. I go, what is this? He goes, just read it. So I read it and it completely changed my path in life. At the time, I was an engineer, looking forward to, doing something in the STEM field. And I said, okay, I need to figure out what money is and how to just protect it. Because clearly there's people in the world who know about tax law and the Federal Reserve and all these things. And I got to figure this out. So then I went down a rabbit hole of Robert Kiyosaki and his precious metals advisor, Mike Maloney, and tons of other guys all over the internet. And I started reading books and listening to podcasts and watching YouTube videos. And I found Hidden Secrets of Money, Mike's legendary series. And that's when I learned so much. And meanwhile, I switched my major to finance. And I learned like absolutely nothing. And I actually had this thought after my junior year of undergrad. I thought, well, I'm not really learning much. Maybe they save all the good stuff for grad school. So I got an MBA. Again, learned basically nothing in the realm that I thought was applicable or interesting or useful to my life. So that was sort of my path. It was like this alternative form of education. And as I watched Mike Maloney on YouTube, I thought, that's exactly what I want to do. I want to be like Mike Maloney. I want to help people understand the difference between money and currency, the role of gold in our monetary system. And, fast forward a lot of years and here I am working alongside him. So it's an absolute honor and a privilege and a dream come true in many ways. So that's my journey.
Again, we'll link to the Hidden Secrets of Money, unbelievable series that will stand the test of time. And then now your series, the Hidden Secrets of Value, which you are ruffling. I messaged you the other day. You're ruffling a lot of feathers on Mike's channel. Mike, you guys have, just under 1 million subscribers on your YouTube channel. Mike's been at it for 15 years on YouTube or more. And so you have brought the Bitcoin ethos, we'll say. What were the orange pill moments for you where you started realizing, oh, there might be something different here? And then just, talk about maybe some of the, feedback you guys are getting, even at Gold and Silver. Even in the last 10 years, Mike's been accepting Bitcoin for 10, 11 years at the dealership there. So I would love for you to kind of touch on some of all these orange pill moments, but also the feedback you guys get living in that world, but talking about Bitcoin.
Yeah. So one of the questions that really has driven me since being a teenager was, how do I protect my value? And I didn't have the phrase store of value in mind. I discovered that later, but that's really the question I was asking is like, what is a store of value and what's the best one? So that's been something I've been looking for 2 decades. And of course, I found gold pretty much right away and silver. And I thought, okay, these are probably the best ones, thousands of years of history. Obviously, pieces of fiat paper are garbage. That's kind of a no-brainer. And I just sort of wondered, like, could anything ever be better than gold? Like, theoretically, if we sit down and design it from scratch and say that, like, any technology is possible, could something better than gold ever exist? Could man design it, or would it have to come from nature? Would it have to be an element on the periodic table, or could it be a compound or a composite or something digital? So I just had all these questions in my mind. And when I first heard about Bitcoin, that was the summer of 2014. It was Andreas Antonopoulos on Joe Rogan. And I thought, oh, this is really interesting. And he mentioned the use case of Muslim women using Bitcoin to essentially have property, even though they were forbidden, by their husbands and by their religion from having property. And I thought, wow, this is like a human rights issue. And that's kind of a cool use case. And I sort of just filed it away, and I wasn't really sure what it was. And I spent the next year really researching Bitcoin, like almost as a full-time job, like 40 hours a week, everything I could consume, just turning all these questions over in my mind. And I eventually came to realize, like, okay, I think this could be something. And I put $1,000 in. I said, okay, let's see what happens. So 5 months later, it was up 50% and I sold. I thought I was the greatest trader ever. I got 50%, 50% in less than half a year. That's incredible. But obviously I should have held, whatever it is, 10 years. So a lot of lessons learned along the way. But fast forward to where we are now, I made Hidden Secrets of Value because despite pursuing this question of what is a store of value, I never really found a satisfying answer. I've read a lot of the mainstream economists, I've watched tons of podcasts. Obviously, you've got, Mike Maloney, Peter Schiff, even, Michael Saylor, Saifedean, Lynn Alden. I mean, the list goes on and on. There's dozens and dozens of people that we read about and we maybe have even interviewed. And when I get down to, like, what is a store of value? Come on, like, be specific. I need something clear, consistent, and useful. It is extremely hard to find a good definition anywhere by anybody, even Aristotle going back thousands of years. Yeah. I just haven't found a convincing definition. So that's what's driven me. And I finally put one together that I think is clear, consistent, and useful. That's why I made the series, Hidden Secrets of Value. So it all orbits around the idea of what is a store of value. However, to your point, when I put that out there in front of our audience at Gold Silver, it ruffled a lot of feathers. Because I say things like, Bitcoin has no intrinsic value, but it is a store of value. Mm-hmm. And they're all up in arms. No way. And, they know that, we agree that gold is a store of value. But I say it has nothing to do with the intrinsic value. It has nothing to do with the physical nature of gold. And the intrinsic value is basically irrelevant. And they're up in arms. Of course it's relevant. It's God's money. Nothing can be better than gold. It's a store of value because of its intrinsic value. And you're a scam artist. So that's coming from my own base, our own subscribers. So it's a little tough to swallow, but all I can do is present what I think is the honest truth and explain my reasoning and have a rational conversation with anybody who wants to discuss it. And, when the dust settles, the truth will present itself, whether it's something that I'm aware of or not. I mean, I could be wrong, but I'm doing my best and just trying to navigate it, same as anybody else.
Yeah, and it really strikes at the core for me too, because this is this age-old question of anyone educating about sound money, you're inevitably run into these issues. Gold and silver was the best thing for 5,000 years we humans had. However, when things change, facts change, we must be able to change. I guess, what do you see when you're, the cognitive dissonance, I guess, people have when they're kind of venturing into this?
The two groups, if I can just say all the Bitcoiners and all the gold people, obviously it's a little reductionist to kind of lump everybody like that. But in general, when they talk past each other, it's exactly that. It's talking past each other. So if you say, I want my money to be physical, that's a personal preference and you're totally entitled to that. And so if you want to rule out anything digital because of it, that's your prerogative. And we don't even have to have a discussion about it. It's only when you say all money must be physical, where it's okay, now you have a burden to back up that claim. If you're going to say all money must be physical, you got to support that somehow. Do you have a bank account? Do you use digital dollars? Have you ever used a credit card? And then you kind of have some inconsistencies there. So the groups tend to talk past each other almost in a way if we were arguing, who's the best NFL quarterback of all time? You say one guy, I say the other guy. We're just cheerleading who we like, right? The real question would be, what is a list of factors so that we could determine the best quarterback? Is it just championships? Is it total passing yards, total touchdowns? Like, what are the criteria? If we agree on the criteria, then it's pretty easy to figure out who's the best. We just run the numbers. Very simple. But people don't want to do that. They don't want to say, like, what are the actual specifics that are a store of value? What are the characteristics of money? They want to just say, money is the thing I like the best, and have fun staying poor, that kind of a thing. It's a little dismissive. So, but another thing that I think is super important is people don't have the time or energy to really think through this stuff. They're busy. And so their brains subconsciously short circuit and just go to an emotional response. And then they grasp for the simplest phrase or explanation to reinforce an emotional decision that they've already made, almost without their awareness. And of course, everybody's tribal, right? Bitcoiners are tribal, gold are tribal. You can be tribal to your favorite sports team or to your country. We're all tribal. And so Bitcoin is this very weird thing that like if you confront it sincerely, you're forced to confront every tribe you've ever belonged in your life. Like, what is value? What is money? How does society work? What do I do with my time? Should I even have a job? Like, there's all these questions, and that's really scary. It's really scary to potentially lose 6 tribes or 10 tribes that you've belonged to your entire life. And it's too much on people's brains, and it's not their fault. I mean, it's simply overloading. So you have to really tiptoe and approach it gradually. And you have to be willing to say, like, all right, I'm going to let go of this one tribe that I've belonged in for 30 years, 40 years, 50 years, because possibly this other tribe might serve me better. That's a really hard thing to do. So to your point about ego, yeah, of course, we all have an ego, and that's relevant. So, there's a phrase in science, science advances one funeral at a time. And it's almost like Bitcoin adoption advances one funeral at a time. Yeah. And it's just, it's not because of facts. It's not because people aren't explaining it well enough. It's just, these things take time. They just really do.
All right, real talk for a second. We all know health insurance is basically the fiat system of healthcare. The biggest debauchery there is. It's expensive, confusing. Somehow you still end up paying hundreds of dollars for a Band-Aid. We moved to crowd sharing almost 5 years ago. It's the best decision we ever made. Instead of sending your money to the insurance company's black hole, you join a like-minded community that directly funds each other's medical bills. Simple, transparent, way cheaper. And that difference you save, you can invest in Bitcoin. It's an amazing win-win. And look, we're part of the Bitcoin community because we believe in freedom, decentralization. Crowd Health brings that same mindset to healthcare. You choose your doctor, you pay in cash, and the community's got your back when the big bills hit. No networks, no middlemen, no bureaucrats trying to approve your care, just people helping people the way it should be. You make decisions about your health. That's as sovereign as it gets. So if you're ready to take the orange pill for your health, this open enrollment, go to Join Crowd Health to get started for $99 for your first 3 months using code Brandon at joincrowdhealth.com. That's joincrowdhealth.com, code Brandon. Crowd Health is not insurance. Opt out. Take your power back. This is how we win. Generational wealth doesn't happen by accident. Bitcoin fixed the money, but it didn't fix the system of protecting and passing it on. Bitcoiners, we have to live in 2 different worlds, idealism versus pragmatism. That's where Meanwhile comes in. It's the world's first Bitcoin-denominated life insurance company, regulated in Bermuda and built entirely by Bitcoiners for Bitcoiners. With Meanwhile, long-term holders can grow and protect their Bitcoin wealth through tax-free policy loans, no repayment obligation, no margin call risk, while making inheritance simple and secure and entirely in Bitcoin. It's about sovereignty, stewardship, and building a legacy that lasts centuries. Because if Bitcoin is forever, your plan should be too. Learn more and sign up with code 4QPBWC at meanwhile.bm. That's meanwhile.bm, code 4QPBWC, or just sign up, the link in the description below. No, I couldn't agree more, Alan. I mean, it's just, I go back to like this demographic shift, which the Harry Dents of the world, all these guys have been talking about for a long time, and they're spot on, but this shift, the demographic shift, seems like it will be much more in the sense of transitioning monetary systems. In your opinion, like, what do you need? I mean, a more homogenous society? Like, is that how you see it? I mean, I would love for you to kind of walk through this for people that are either on both sides of the fence. And if we're going to do this, then it feels like we have to have a ledger that cannot be rearranged here by a man.
Yeah. I definitely agree with you. It is time. We're almost long overdue for digitally native money. And I would distinguish that from a digitally native currency. So the difference in my mind between a money and a currency, probably the simplest way to explain it is that there's 2 use cases when you have money or a monetary asset. The 2 things you can do with it are hold on to it, potentially for a long period of time, or spend it. That's it. That's the only things you do with money. So I would argue with money, the reason you have it is to hold it a long time. It's to store your purchasing power or to store value for a long period of time. Then when you're done storing it, that's when you either sell it or spend it to somebody else, and they start using it to store their value. Okay, so somebody is always storing value at any given time, and it's nice that Bitcoin has the UTXOs, because whoever has them is currently doing that at any given time. Anyways, so I do think the internet or the world needs a digitally native money. I think it's Bitcoin. People might want to debate that, but I think the debate is settled. And we're going to need one in the physical world as well, because there are those edge cases of, oh, what if a global EMP takes out, everything that uses electricity? Okay, I guess, I don't know. Then my Bitcoin is temporarily worthless. Fine. But I also have some gold and I have some silver, and I probably am going to make it through. And I'm not really worried about what my Bitcoin's value is worth during that period, because eventually we'll make it out of that crisis. We'll restore the power grid. We'll get the blockchain back up and running. And once it stabilizes, then I'll start to think about what my Bitcoin is worth. So that's my personal take on it. Other people might be scared if they can't use their Bitcoin during a crisis, then maybe they shouldn't even own it. If that's how you think, that's how you think. There's no problem with that. For me, it's a very long-term strategy. And if there's a power outage that lasts 5 years, my goodness, I can't imagine what the world would be like. But, whatever, the Bitcoin will still be there on the other side of it. So,
it's funny. I was going to ask you, what do you think Bitcoiners miss? And you kind of answered it right there. And I feel like it's the tail risk. And so is there anything else that Bitcoiners might be missing that, maybe they're a blind eye to?
Yeah, I've got some fun ones, but Bitcoiners aren't going to like hearing this. I think that Bitcoiners miss how weird we are. We don't realize how Bitcoiners are very weird people. We're very weird people. And we can think outside the box. We can sort of be more objective, I would argue, than the average person. Most Bitcoiners miss what I would call the fact. I would say they miss the fact, but maybe it's not a fact. But I would say Bitcoiners miss the likelihood or the probability that Bitcoin adoption would be accelerated by advocating for gold. I think Bitcoiners completely miss that. There's a lot of excitement around the Bitcoin strategic reserve. A lot of people want Trump to buy a whole bunch of Bitcoin and the US to adopt a Bitcoin standard. And of course, the game theory would force other countries to do it. No question. I think Bitcoiners miss the fact that the whole world has been preparing for a gold standard. The entire 8 billion people on planet Earth are kind of fine with a gold standard, whereas most of them are utterly terrified of Bitcoin. It's scarier than the boogeyman. It's scarier than a horror film. They think Bitcoin is a scam. It's a Ponzi scheme. It's worthless. The people who advocate it are criminals. Bitcoiners forget that. They forget how many billions of people really don't like Bitcoin and actively distrust it, and they actively distrust people who recommend it. So as much as, we want a Bitcoin standard, and I think most of us know that it's inevitable, it's not inevitable in the next 3 to 5 years. It's inevitable in 50 years. So I think Bitcoin adoption actually accelerates if we advocate for a gold standard on Trump's administration in the next 3 years. The world goes on a gold standard that does not handicap Bitcoin in any way. I'll still continue to own Bitcoin, and I own far more Bitcoin than I own gold. And the world would be much better off on an official gold standard. And then all of us weirdos who own Bitcoin, our values are going to go up measured in gold. Our values are going to go up astronomically measured in dollars. We'll still continue to do well and accrue purchasing power, but the rest of the world gets lifted off the fiat downward spiral and onto sound money. It's maybe just not the best sound money available. However, as I said, Bitcoin adoption advances one funeral at a time. I don't think we're going to get like a global official Bitcoin standard until, the president of the United States is born after Satoshi launched the Bitcoin network. So a president born in, January of 2009 or later. I mean, it's going to be a long time until there's an official Bitcoin standard or monetary policy in the world. But I don't think we need to be in a hurry to get that. I think Bitcoiners are much better off if we advocate for a gold standard. So that's one of the biggest things that Bitcoiners are missing. So I'll let you chime in.
No, it's so good, and it's tough because you have to live in this world where 100 things are true. What are your thoughts on, since I just mentioned this too, like determining value? Like when you look at determining value, how do you really determine things? This is one of the things that too, you mentioned this. It really took me a long time to figure out, because being in the business cycle and investing and trying to raise money, you never knew what was going on in the fiat world. It was always impossible to predict what was happening. So how would you explain to someone that's kind of lost and just like wondering what's going on? How do you start determining value when you're looking at anything, like grocery bills or investing or whatever it might be?
Value, I define value as perceived benefit. That's it. You don't have to overcomplicate it. It's if you think something is beneficial to you, then it's valuable to you. That's it. You don't need to read a textbook or get the latest economic theories. If it's valuable to you, go for it. It could be helpful to classify different types of value. We might say something has intrinsic value or extrinsic value. And before I go too far on that, I should just address the people who think intrinsic value doesn't exist, because the idea of value is in the eye of the beholder. It's subjective. I agree. Mm-hmm. And the idea of something intrinsic is in the object itself. So something inside an ounce of gold. So the value can't be in it. The value's in my mind, as I look at it. Okay. What I mean when I say intrinsic value is perceived benefit value that comes from the intrinsic properties of this thing. So the fact that gold can conduct electricity, mm-hmm. You can use it in all kinds of industrial applications. It has a bunch of intrinsic properties. So what I refer to as intrinsic value is the benefit that we would get from using those properties. And so, not to get too into the weeds or too complicated, but I would argue that the intrinsic value in my mind when I look at gold might be different than the intrinsic value in your mind when you look at gold, because we would value the ability to conduct electricity slightly differently, right? And if one of us has an aerospace company, we'd be like, oh yeah, that's going to be valuable for the stuff I do. And if one of us has a dentistry, side hustle in our garage, we might value it differently. Okay. So the intrinsic value in society is maybe like the aggregate or like the average that people assess. So how do you go about valuing something? Any way you are. Like if you're going to get a benefit from it, great, it's valuable to you. One distinction I would make right off the bat is price versus value. These are different things. A lot of people say like, oh, the price of gold today went up, so it went up in value today. And I would say, no, the value of gold is the same. The price went up, and we could try to describe why or explain why based on supply and demand or people's opinions changing and so forth. So price is not the same as value. And that's very important because when you start asking about a store of value, people often say, oh, Bitcoin lost 20% from the peak. Oh, it's not much of a store of value. And you hear it with gold. Oh, gold is down 5% this week, not really acting like a store of value. And for a while, that sounded convincing to me until I realized, oh, they're talking about a store of price. They want something that's a store of price, which is kind of weird because if you want a store of price, just hold dollars. Just hold dollars. A dollar will never be worth less than a dollar. And hold that for 100 years and see what happens to you. You've got a store of price. It never went down. But obviously, it's not a store of value because you won't be able to buy anything. You won't be able to afford anything. So that's part of the problem. That's part of the insidious nature of the fiat system where dollars are not backed by gold or any kind of honest money, which is you have to choose one or the other. You can choose a store of price and you can hold dollars as long as you want, but they're not going to be a store of value. Or you can hold something that is a store of value, I would say gold, silver, Bitcoin, but they're not a store of price. And that sucks. Like it really sucks. Like, because if you have a monetary system where the dollar is backed by one of those, you can hold dollars or the thing backing dollars, and it's both a store of price and a store of value. So that's the kind of world I want to live in. But in the meantime, you've got to pick one or the other. So we're in this weird place where a store of value, bizarrely, can lose 20%, 30%, 70%. For example, gold lost 70% of its price, 70% from 1980 to 2000. So over 20 years, it lost 70%. Would you say, oh, gold wasn't a store of value for those 2 decades, but then for the next 2 decades, it was a store of value? I mean, if you're going to flip-flop like that, then you have no idea if gold or anything else is going to be a store of value over the next 5 years or 10 years, because you're talking about a store of price and we don't know what the price is going to be. So going back to your original question, what is value? The huge epiphany for me about what value is it's a low entropy state. Anything valuable, and I'll explain this in a second, anything valuable is a low entropy state. So basically, it's a organized arrangement of energy that you can use for something valuable to you. And the opposite of that is when your energy dissipates. That is not useful to you. It's not valuable. And the way you can build an intuition around this is think about anything you've ever done that's a household chore, a job you had, something you paid someone else to do. Like if you pay someone to drive you to the airport, you pay someone to make you dinner at a restaurant, you pay someone to clean your house, whatever it is, cut your hair. Anytime you pay someone to do something, the one thing that every type of employment has in common is that it's lowering the entropy of a system. So it's basically creating order out of chaos. Whatever system you're talking about, you are far away from the airport, you have them create order, bring it together, create an order, neat arrangement of things, clean up your hair, whatever it is. So that's every single job, every single company. If you develop a website, a piece of software, if you mow someone's lawn, you're reducing the entropy of a system. So anything valuable reduces entropy. And if you sit there and do nothing, the second law of thermodynamics says the entropy of the universe is always increasing. So if you just sit there, your lawn is going to grow, it's going to become disheveled, you're going to get weeds, it's going to be a mess. Your hair, same thing. Your bedroom will get messy, your kitchen will get messy, your company will become disorderly if you don't have somebody there providing direction, creating order, providing focus. So that's value. Value is a low entropy state. A store of value preserves a low entropy state. So you can think of the same thing that a refrigerator or a freezer does for your food, right? Because when food spoils, the energy spreads out. You get mold or bacteria, fungus, whatever it is that causes the energy to spread out. The food spoils. You can put it in a fridge or a freezer to prevent it from spoiling, to preserve that low entropy state. And so the analogy in finance is you can use money to protect your low entropy state, and it prevents your energy from spreading out or leaking over time. So the best store of value is the asset that best keeps entropy low. And for 5,000 years, gold was better than anything else. I think now Bitcoin is more thermodynamically sound than gold, which is why I'm betting so heavily on Bitcoin. But I own both. So that's my take on value.
Your videos are phenomenal because, Mike's videos go into great depth, just like in the macro, just, the whole system, money, how it works and everything. And yours really get into the weeds even more, while at the same time also staying zoomed out, which is a pretty incredible feat for both the series. But price versus value. And I remember Mike 10, 15 years ago saying, people know the price of everything and the value of nothing. What are your thoughts on just the CBDCs? This is something that, again, whether it's on your channel, you get a lot as a Bitcoiner in the magic internet money world of, Bitcoin is created from the NSA. Does it even matter if it was created from the NSA? In the CBDCs, we have Stablecoins, Tether, all this kind of stuff going on. I would love your thoughts on kind of just this ecosystem. And we see this bifurcation, I think, of Stablecoins and CBDCs and things of that nature. And then you have Bitcoin over here, but everyone thinks it's all kind of the same. So I love your take on everything you're seeing.
Yeah. So I would say that Bitcoin kind of stands alone among the, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of other cryptocurrencies out there. And I would say Bitcoin is digital money and all the other coins are digital currencies. And the relationship between them, you could think of like a pyramid or a tower. At the base level, you have money. And we can do this in the physical world using gold at the bottom, or in the digital world using Bitcoin at the bottom, but the principles are the same. So at the base layer, you have layer one money, which I would say is real money. Okay. So it's designed to be a store of value, and the optimal use case is saving it. Okay. It's optimized to resist an increase in entropy. The drawback to that is that it's not scalable. So gold and Bitcoin are not very good at being a medium of exchange. It's very hard to go to the grocery store or a coffee shop and make a transaction using Bitcoin on chain, or using actual physical gold in your hand. It's very hard to do that. Very expensive, very time consuming. And that's just a drawback. It's okay. It's not a criticism. It's just one of the natural design trade-offs that you'd have with anything. What sits on top of that in our monetary pyramid is layer 2 money. So historically, a gold certificate was a piece of paper that could circulate among people. Very easy to go buy groceries using pieces of paper. But it's basically a claim check on gold, and the gold just sits in the vaults. So that piece of paper circulates as a currency, and then eventually when you want, you can go redeem the piece of paper for gold. Of course, there's a problem of you can print more pieces of paper than there are gold to back it up. So, there's problems with everything, but that's just what happens. So I think in order to scale Bitcoin, quote unquote, the same thing will happen. We'll have digital currencies that are not Bitcoin, but they're promises to receive Bitcoin. And effectively, that's what the Lightning Network is. And you could come up with 1,000 other solutions, and they could all coexist. You don't need one solution to rule them all. It's actually better if it's all sliced and diced based on different jurisdictions, different use cases, different companies, different credit risks. It's actually better if there's a proliferation of solutions. So there's really no reason to advocate for one over another. So there will be many currencies out there, and hopefully the ones I'm talking about here will be a promise to receive Bitcoin, a promise to pay Bitcoin, promise to receive Bitcoin. And so those currencies will be scalable. You can transact them instantly. You won't have to wait 10 minutes for, a block confirmation. You won't have to wait an hour for 6 block confirmations in order to be reasonably sure that the transaction won't be reversed. So you'll be able to do it at the speed of life, the same way you can pay with dollars now or Apple Pay or whatever it is. So all the different currencies out there, that's kind of how I think about them. Then there's the whole group of currencies that will not be promises to pay Bitcoin. They'll be utility tokens. That's probably what most people are familiar with these days, like, the Ethereums and the Solanas and the Cardanos and the XRPs and so forth. Many Bitcoiners just call them shitcoins. Fine.
Yeah.
No, they're not money. Of course, they're not money. They're utility tokens. Yeah. And my attitude towards all these utility tokens is basically like, what is your attitude towards Chuck E. Cheese? Chuck E. Cheese or Dave and Buster's? You might think, you might think they're fun places to go, or maybe it's not fun for you, but it's fun for your kids, or people who enjoy going. Fine. If you think Chuck E. Cheese has a great business model, they've got this wonderful vision of the future, are you going to go acquire all the little tokens that get put into the skee-ball machines? Or are you going to try to buy equity in the company so you get a piece of the growth of the company? To me, it makes a lot more sense to buy actual equity in the company. But all of these crypto tokens, these utility tokens, they're the little tokens that you put in the skee-ball machine. Those aren't going to, in the long term, be any more valuable in the future than they are today. It doesn't make sense to stock up on them unless you personally are going to use them. If you're going to go play skee-ball, great. Buy as many tokens as you plan on putting in the machine. No problem. And then you don't care if they go up or down in price. But if you're bullish on Chuck E. Cheese, you don't stock up on the tokens. Buy equity in the company. So if you really like Ethereum, try to get a private placement in Ethereum somehow. Or if you like XRP, try to get a private placement in Ripple Labs. But don't, just holding the token just doesn't make any sense. So that's my thought on the utility tokens. And then CBDCs, they're terrifying, man. The CBDCs, they could be absolutely anything. I don't like admitting this, but in all reality, I'll probably end up using them because, it's kind of one of those things where you're not going to have a choice. You might be able to resist for a few months or, who knows how long, but eventually you'll just be cut off from society unless you participate. However, it's not an all or nothing thing. I don't like using the banking system. I don't like using fiat at all. And, at a certain point in my life, a few years ago, I tried not to use fiat and it was so hard. It was just so hard to be a part of society. Maybe I didn't try hard enough, but eventually I just went back to it. And now I have a credit card, with JP Morgan Chase. I just hate it. I absolutely hate it. But it's like, what are you going to do? Just not be a part of society? So I think when it comes to CBDCs, I'm going to reluctantly and begrudgingly use it as little as possible. But in the meantime, I'll still continue to own gold, silver, and Bitcoin and, other things that I believe in. So, yeah, they're spy coins. They're going to invade our privacy. They'll be able to turn them off. They'll be able to inflate them away. It's going to totally suck. But what are you going to do,
Now that you have your hardware wallet, the key data generated needs to be stored in something forever that can withstand fire, flood, nuclear fallout, checks, hockey pucks. This is your 12-word C plate, your 24-word C plate. After a lot of people asking for your 12-word C plate, here it is, stampseed.com, code Brandon for 15% off. After everything that's going on in the world, fires we've seen in the Pacific Palisades, what we've seen happen in Hawaii, everything gone. Titanium seed plates withstands everything. Your posterity will thank you. It only takes a few minutes. Don't let these little things, these small investments investments scare you from the most important aspects of Bitcoin and the first money we have ever conceived here on Earth. Stampseed.com, code Brandon for 15% off. There's one thing more important than Bitcoin: the time you have and the people and relationships you build. In a world full of noise, the real signal is meeting with other Bitcoiners IRL, finding Bitcoin-only events, connecting face-to-face, and supporting the circular economy through Bitcoin-friendly merchants around the world. That's exactly what Club Orange is built for. Build your circle. Support Bitcoin-only companies. The only place in the world you can find all that in one spot is the Club Orange app on iOS or Android. Go to cluborange.org, what used to be the Orange Pill app, or scan the code here. Everything you are learning in this episode is completely moot and does not matter if you hold Bitcoin and are still leaving it on an exchange or sharing keys and your KYC information with a third party. This is your wake-up call now. You are only self-sovereign if you alone hold the keys to your wealth. 100% self-custody sounds daunting at first. Believe me, I lost 2 years of massive gains over a decade ago because I was worried about taking the few minutes it took to understand self-custody. And that's exactly why you need to talk to my friends, Tony Yazbek and his team at the Bitcoin Way. We just interviewed Tony recently, has over 80,000 views, an overwhelming response. People love his story and the simplicity he shares of how easy it is to custody and take ownership of the greatest money we've ever seen. They'll train you to do it right the first time. Head on over to thebitcoinway.com/Brandon to schedule a free 30-minute consultation today. Their 5-star rated service is exactly what you need. Quit sitting on your hands like I did and get started today. Again, that's thebitcoinway.com/BRANDON. It's the lose the battle, win the war. Sometimes, like that's, it's the balance of, do you die on that hill or do you live to fight another day and be a part of the battle still, right? Do you kind of foresee a free banking type of era where people are competing? Like you said, it'd be great to have more layers and different layers, whether it's the Fedi mints or the Liquid or Lightning and these different chains on top of Bitcoin that are being built. Is that kind of what you were alluding to?
Yeah. I think there'll be a proliferation of layer 2 technologies, and then there'll be layer 3 and layer 4, and those will be certainly interesting. And all the layer 3 ones will be promises to get the layer 2 stuff. So there'll be a lot of innovation. It'll be pretty exciting, and obviously tons of things will fail, and there'll be some vaporware, there'll be scams, and that will cause Bitcoin to get a bad name, but it won't really matter in the long run. And it's just, I think that's just the way it's going to go. But yeah, I mean, I think the future is inevitable, and I think all these bumps are also inevitable, and just no big deal.
Yeah, it's so true. What are your thoughts on I mentioned stablecoins a second ago, but just, again, that's kind of like the flavor of the day. Everyone's talking about stablecoins. If, the Genius Act, the Clarity Act, and things that are going on, it feels like the government's really trying to push here in America, obviously, to get treasuries out there. And so this is just like opening the floodgates. Well, people need stablecoins. They need to access the dollar all around the world. It feels like, again, we're just kicking the can down the road, the inevitability, like you just said. I feel like with the Matrix, Agent Smith, and he's just like, you hear that sound? It's the sound of inevitability, that this is all collapsing. We just keep kicking the can. But, the gold crowd will say, hey, we can do all this, but it's a gold backed stable coin. And I just go back to the Oracle problem. I don't know how you marry those two worlds together. Any thoughts on all of that?
I'm not sure I've formed like a meaningful opinion on stable coins. You can look at it through so many different lenses. Well, you can look at Bitcoin through a lot of different lenses as well. All the risks that come from having a centralized agency. So whether it's counterparty risk, management risk, custodian risk, jurisdiction risk, you name it. I mean, you can come up with all the risks you want when there's a central party. And yeah, it's like, how they say like democracy is the worst form of government except for all the others. And it's kind of like, a gold backed monetary system it's the worst monetary system except for all the others. They come and go in cycles. So for me to say it's inevitable is almost a meaningless claim, but it's inevitable that we go to it. It's inevitable that we fall off of it. It's inevitable we go to it again and then we fall off it again. And so I think, we're going to go to a gold-backed system. I don't know, there's a bunch of companies trying to do it. I just recorded a video about goldbacks today. It's a company that's trying to create a gold-backed currency physically, and there's plenty that do it digitally, and there's so many throughout the years. And they all inevitably fail for different reasons. I mean, if we're being honest, they all fail eventually, but that doesn't mean they're scams. That doesn't mean that we shouldn't try to use them. We keep trying to reinvent the wheel, but we do have that problem of, who's holding the gold and do they have all the gold that they say? Same thing with Bitcoin. I mean, obviously the Bitcoin ledger is public, but I'm not sure that that's going to guarantee that everyone issuing Bitcoin promises has the Bitcoin to back it up.
Mm-hmm.
There will absolutely be a fractional Bitcoin system, and it'll kind of be one of those things where we all kind of know, but at
Mm-hmm.
first there's like 99%
FTX.
backing, and then we're not
Yeah.
sure. And then it's kind of going to slip a little. And then, some people get spooked, and, some people will stay in too long and other people will get out. And that's just the way it's going to go. I don't think there's like a solution to this. It's just the way the world goes. You have to be aware of it and then just pay attention and just sort of maneuver in and out of the different centralized risks, and diversify all those different centralized risks. Don't put all your eggs into one company or country's basket. Spread them out. And, to the extent that you can, probably, or at least what I do, is I have as much of my wealth in decentralized assets. So like gold, silver, and Bitcoin, physical, layer one, cold storage. That way the centralization risk is me. Like if I goof up, that's the only way I'm going to lose these things, is if I goof up. But it's not on anyone else's shoulders.
Going back to what do Bitcoiners miss? I think this is another, we can chalk that maybe in this category as well, that Bitcoin doesn't cure all problems, right? Bitcoin fixes this. It is an analogy, or it's a meme to get the unaware into the door. Is to like wake you up, context shift, whatever. But as soon as someone's in the door, then that has to change. And there's a lot of these memes that they cut both ways. And that's where the Bitcoiners are a great memeing crowd. The hope, at least in my eyes, is that the time chain every 10 minutes, it's just an auditing mechanism. That's what the time chain is, what Bitcoin is. And that people will blow themselves up faster. And I know that sounds bad, but it's a good thing, because hopefully this clears out society quicker, because we can actually audit what's going on quicker than trying to track down, hey, is the gold in Fort Knox? Hey, do the Chinese have the gold? And none of us know that. We never get transparency. So that, I guess it leads me to the end game of like the ETFs. Obviously, it's a big thing in Bitcoin. It's been 20 years, 25 years with gold and silver. There's, the suppression. This is how all this stuff, they're trying to centralize it. Again, it's another centralizing mechanism. So I'd love your thoughts. Just unpack all of this a little bit. Just your thoughts on the ETFs, whether it's gold and silver, and just kind of what's going on and what has gone on there, but also is Bitcoin kind of going that same route? And will Bitcoin be a better auditing mechanism, in the sense of, can it get us to merit and accountability and responsibility quicker than maybe the physical world?
Yeah, those are some important questions. So with the growth of ETFs, it is a centralization tendency, a centralization vector. And, obviously we see that with gold and silver, and we're seeing it with Bitcoin, which really shouldn't be surprising, because Bitcoin is digital gold. I really think that's like the best way to explain it. It's often misunderstood, and it's often considered a narrative. And I mean, I just think it's the shortest explanation of what Bitcoin is. It's a digital version of gold. And so, yeah, it does get centralized. That's just a feature of the asset. And so how big of a deal is that? A lot of people get up in arms like, oh, Bitcoin is now centralized. Bitcoin is fundamentally centralized. It's a Wall Street asset now. It's in the hands of BlackRock and the other players. I don't think that's true. I think that misunderstands what centralized is. I would say that Bitcoins are concentrated, just like gold. So gold is concentrated in the hands of the major players, the Fort Knoxes and so forth. So gold is concentrated, but it's not centralized. So for something to be centralized, somebody on the node has to have permissions that other people don't have. And in the case of gold, you and I can go mine gold, we can refine it, we can do whatever we want with gold. The same thing that, the US Treasury can do, or the same thing that COMEX, they give themselves laws, but it's not laws. It's laws about what they're allowed to do with gold. It's not laws about what gold is. So I would say gold is decentralized. Nobody has any special permissions with gold itself. There are obviously permissions with commerce and so forth, but that's a separate issue. Same is true of Bitcoin. Nobody has any special permissions on the Bitcoin network. If you and I want to spin up a node or a mining rig or whatever we want to do, set up a merchant platform, we can do the same thing that BlackRock can do. It's the exact same. So that's what decentralized means. It's just that the Bitcoins, because of the gravity of money, they tend to concentrate, not centralized. They tend to concentrate in a single area. Concentration is a temporary phenomenon. So back, if you remember a few years ago, when most of the Bitcoin miners were concentrated in China, people were saying, Bitcoin is centralized. It's centralized. All the mining's in China. It's like, no, it's not centralized. It's concentrated. It's concentrated there, and it's a temporary phenomenon. It's not an explicit permission. It's a temporary phenomenon. And it may go away. Just as it naturally arose, it may naturally disappear. And sure enough, the Chinese government outlaws Bitcoin mining and all the miners leave China. Oh, amazing. So that's just an example of how things temporarily concentrate and then they could temporarily distribute. And it's just this ebb and flow. So that's the same thing that's happening in Bitcoin. It's not fundamentally concentrated. Excuse me, it's not fundamentally centralized. It is currently concentrated. And so what does that mean for Bitcoin holders? Well, I mean, if you own your own Bitcoin, that isn't a promise, right? So if you've taken it off an exchange and you own it in cold storage, it shouldn't really matter. It shouldn't matter if BlackRock or whoever has a ton of Bitcoin, if they have 1 million of the Bitcoins or whatever the number is, it really shouldn't matter. So, they're going to try to manipulate the price up or down at different times for different reasons. They're going to try to shake out weak hands. And so your job is to not be a weak hand. That's it. That's how you beat them, is you don't get shaken out. That's literally how you beat them. You have tougher hands than they do. That's it.
Yeah. And again, it's something that, rings in my head again from Mike 10, 15 years ago, is you don't hold it, you don't own it. What are your thoughts on BRICS? What do you see from your angle, from your guys' vantage point when it comes to BRICS, or just how these things are shaping out, or even America here, obviously, and what is being said or maybe not being said?
This is maybe the most important question over the next few years. I think the world is heading towards a gold-backed global monetary system. That's what I think is happening. And this has been in place for more than a decade, probably even longer. The major players in the world know that the fiat system is going to collapse eventually. And I think they want to usher in a gold-backed, stable alternative in a controlled fashion rather than in a chaotic fashion. And there's a lot of clues. So you can see that going back, at least 5 years, but a lot of the European central banks, you can see that their gold stockpiles relative to GDP, so gold to GDP, they've been right-sizing that ratio across different countries. So like Germany, Poland, France, you name it, like a dozen countries. Some of them had pretty high amount of gold to GDP, and they've been selling their gold a little bit. Others have had very little gold relative to GDP, and they've been accumulating. And you can see the trend. They're all very close to the same amount now, which is not a coincidence. It looks so coordinated. So like this has been going on for years. So fine. They're coordinating a certain gold to GDP ratio. No big deal. That's Europe. You look at the BRICS nations. They've been talking about de-dollarization for forever, since they existed. And obviously China is buying gold and producing gold like you wouldn't believe, and like the official numbers don't suggest. They may even have more gold than the United States. So the official reserves, the US has the most gold reserves, 8,000 tons, 8,133. But there's a pretty decent chance that China has more gold. So for the last few years, China has been the number one producer of gold, mining more gold within its own borders, but also the number one importer of gold, which is kind of unusual, because normally when a country is the number one producer of something, it's also a major exporter of that thing. Like Mexico is the number one producer of avocados. It's also the number one exporter of avocados. Like it sends them all to the United States, basically. So that's true of like a lot of goods. So you would think that if China is the number one producer of gold, it would be exporting gold all over the world for, all the dentistry practices that are all over. But that's not the case. So China produces a bunch of gold, but it also imports more gold than any other country. So, and that's officially. And there's tons of evidence to suggest that they're actually accumulating more gold than the official numbers. So I would say BRICS as a unit, it's inevitable. They are absolutely going to come out with a gold-backed currency. I don't know what it's going to be called. I don't know if it'll be a gold-backed yuan. My guess is that they'll pick something that's not tied to one of the countries, not like a ruble or a yuan. That's my guess, but that's not a very strong opinion. But what's really interesting is that Trump, I think, wants to put the dollar back on a gold standard during his administration. So he has said something like that. He has said, there's kind of something nice about having the dollar backed by gold. He has said that. And Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent has said, back when I had my fund, people would call me a gold bug. That's how much I liked gold. And he has also said that he thinks in the next 4 years, meaning the Trump administration, he thinks there'll be a new Bretton Woods. And so for anyone who doesn't know, Bretton Woods was the last meeting that basically culminated in the creation of the current monetary system that we have. So if there's a Mar-a-Lago Accord, with all the nations getting together to negotiate a new monetary system, I think that'll be backed by gold. However, there's this huge game theory element that is very important, I think, to understand, which is Trump is a temporary employee. We know when his job ends. Like, we know what day he is no longer in office. Whereas if you look at the leaders of the BRICS nations, like Putin, Xi Jinping, and so forth, they have the luxury of being in office longer than Trump, for sure. They can just stay in office. They can have fake elections, whatever they want to do, which means that if Trump tries to have a Mar-a-Lago Accord and get the world to agree on a monetary system, if it's a bad deal for any of the BRICS nations, they're not going to take it. They have no reason to take it. They can just sit and wait out Trump. And Trump is in this tough position. He's got a big ego. He thinks very highly of himself. I think he wants to have his name on this deal. I think he wants to make a deal. I think he's going to be forced to accept an inferior deal from America and then just spin it as a great deal. This is amazing. Meanwhile, it's great for the BRICS nations somehow. I think America's going to lose in this one, but that doesn't mean that Americans all collectively have to lose. You can just buy gold, silver, and Bitcoin yourself right now, and then you don't have to worry about what deal is negotiated. Like, you can front run all the most powerful countries in the world by just figuring out what these assets are and then taking physical. So I think it's going to be really fascinating. I can't wait. It's like a get your popcorn ready situation. It's like the thing I'm most excited about is like what's going to happen with the global monetary system in the next few years. But I don't feel like I need to bet on what specifically happens. I don't need to be right. I just know that gold, silver, and Bitcoin are the best assets, and they can do whatever they want, and I'll be okay.
They're definitely the cream of the crop, the strongest horses in the race. That's for sure. I mean, it is wild because again, going back to this whole thing of like what Bitcoiners get wrong, it's the self-introspection that you constantly have to go through. And gold and silver bugs have to do this. Bitcoiners have to do this, these blind spots. Do you think that the US has been playing coy? I mean, would it surprise you if there was more gold there than anywhere else in the world? I mean, like, is this is just a complete game, it feels like.
Yeah, I would be shocked if there's more gold than the official amount. That'd be so hard to believe. But I also don't think that there'd be any way for them to demonstrate that convincingly. I mean, unless I was there and I counted all the bars myself, but I can't imagine a scenario in which that would happen.
That's the problem. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'd be pretty pleasantly surprised if all the bars are there that are officially supposed to be there. If it matches up 1-to-1, I'd be like, wow, okay. I didn't see that coming. I actually thought a certain chunk of it was missing, honestly. And there's a lot of evidence to suggest that, the US leased out a bunch of gold in the 70s and 80s, maybe never got it back. And then if you look at the inflows on the COMEX in New York, since Trump was elected, so going back roughly 1 year ago, November of 2024, if you start looking at the monthly flows for December, January, February, March, maybe April, about 5 or 6 months, there's an extremely large amount of gold inflows into the United States onto the COMEX. It's like a suspiciously large amount, like double or triple or quadruple the average amount, depending on the month. It's like a lot of gold. And so you got to wonder, like, well, why did that happen right when Trump was elected? And where did it go? Like, who bought it? Or is it just, it's not sitting on the COMEX anymore? So it had to go somewhere. And my theory is that gold went to replace some of the gold in Fort Knox, so I'm not sure. It's just sort of like circumstantial evidence and trying to evaluate the incentives and the risk factors and so forth. So I could be wrong about that, but if I'm wrong about that, it doesn't really affect my life. So it's not something that's important to be right about, if that makes sense.
Wouldn't that be a way to lose currency reserve status probably? And then they're talking about all this reshoring and like, we need to get all this back here. We need to, get. Well, wouldn't that be a quick way, in essence, or a quicker way to, hey, we're going to back it by this hard asset all of a sudden, things get revalued, and then you would have an onshoring would have to come back home because now you don't have this arbitrage being played around the world with the currency wars, in essence.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think that would be a good way to immediately solve the Triffin dilemma. And
thank you. Yeah.
Yeah, Triffin. Yeah, exactly. So yeah, Triffin dilemma, for anyone who doesn't know, is like the dilemma you have if you have the world reserve currency, because you want two things, but you can't have them both at the same time. So you want people to have other countries, but you want the entire world to have access to your currency. So you kind of have to sell your currency into the markets, yet you want it to be valuable. But if you sell it too much, it starts to lose its value. And the problem with that is to your point, all the manufacturing is incentivized to go overseas because the cost of manufacturing, the cost of wages and labor and so forth is too high domestically. So it's just cheaper to produce it in foreign countries. So yeah, it's a bit of a dilemma. I mean, certainly it's a dilemma. But what's interesting is that the Triffin dilemma is just like the fiat dilemma. It's the fiat dilemma. So it applies at the scale of world reserve currency, as we're talking about, but it also applies domestically. Like if you just invent a dollar domestically, you want people to use it, you sell it, you have to somehow sell it so that it gets into people's hands. But if you do that too much, it starts to lose its value and people don't want it. So you're constantly in this balancing act of we want to sell it out there so people can use it, but not too much. Otherwise it'll lose its value and go to zero and it'll hyperinflate. And so even if you take reserve currency status out of it, it's the same dilemma globally. And by the way, it's the same dilemma that all these cryptocurrencies have that either do a pre-mine or whatever. It doesn't matter. Somehow the founders have a bunch of coins and they want people to use their token. So they sell it into the marketplace. But if they sell too much of it, the price crashes and nobody wants it. So there's this constant balancing act. And so it's the same dilemma. And I think of it as the fiat dilemma because even these cryptocurrencies are basically fiat currencies as well. So it's the fiat dilemma. And you're absolutely right. The way you solve it is like you just get rid of your fiat currency. You say, we're not going to have one. Like, we'll just use real honest money that no one's in charge of. And then the free market gets to figure out the value of each unit of money, like how much labor goes into producing it. And therefore, how much you should pay somebody who's going to do labor for you, you know, whatever it is, fixing your car or cutting your lawn or whatever. You just let the free market decide. And then there is no dilemma. There's absolutely no dilemma. And you have all the manufacturing you should have domestically. You have all the right industries and so forth. But the hard thing about that, well, there's two hard things. One, transitioning from where we currently are, we would have to default on everything. We'd have to default on Social Security. We'd have to default on just treasuries, all the promises we've made, all the unfunded liabilities. It would just be a nightmare. So that's why it's not so easy to just say, all right, we're backing the dollar with gold starting tomorrow. Everything would crash. We would just default, just like immediate bankruptcy. Or to prevent that, the price of gold would have to go to like $30,000 or $40,000 an ounce, you know, some crazy astronomical number. And then you can meet all your liabilities, except you've just impoverished everyone holding dollars who doesn't also have gold. So you've just impoverished the entire nation. Now you have riots, you have civil war, you have strife. So it just simply wouldn't work. So that's the main obstacle to going back onto a sound money standard immediately, even though if we could somehow get there, it would be great. And then the other problem is if you're a government and you're on a sound money standard, your hands are sort of tied. Like you have to, in terms of like responding to natural disasters or national emergencies or, you know, wanting to have social programs and help, you know, whatever group du jour, you can't. Like you can't just print money out of thin air. You have to go out and mine gold. So you you can imagine like all the congressmen like going into the mines, like mining for gold. We're gonna get some affordable housing for the homeless. Just so once we mine enough gold to pay for it. I mean, so it would just keep government out of it, the private sector. Yeah, I know. I'd love to see it too. What happened?
I would love begging, coming in with their hats, begging for taxes, or actually in the mines mining. I would pay gold and silver and Bitcoin to see that, Alan. So where do you see the end game for the physical metals, and then also for Bitcoin? Like for Bitcoin, I think of like Jeff Booth. I'm a believer of there's 900 trillion in assets in the world, and Bitcoin has to account for all that because Bitcoin is money and it correlates to one. I'm in that camp and I like arguing about that back and forth, but I would love your thoughts on, where you think Bitcoin ends up in the long term, 50 years from now, 100 years from now, whatever it is. And then, where you see gold and silver as well right now.
So yeah, I've heard this argument from many people, Jeff Booth and others. I mean, like it's a common argument of, there's X trillion, 200 trillion, 900 trillion, some number in between, and Bitcoin has to account for it. To an extent, that's true, but not to the full extent. And so I would say, well, why hasn't gold accounted for all that? Gold has been money, even if it's unofficially money, it's money. It's, go back before 2008, before Bitcoin white paper. Why didn't gold account for all that? And so if gold doesn't account for that regularly, then I wouldn't expect Bitcoin to account for it at all. It wouldn't be that high. I don't think it'd be that high. It'll certainly be way higher than it is, but I don't think it'll be that high. So there's kind of a long list of things that Bitcoiners miss. And I would say that's one of
Mhm.
them. We talked about a couple earlier. If there's a group of people who can handle uncomfortable truths, it's Bitcoiners. Like they'll take it
I will
and,
say that, yeah. Yep.
they'll walk away with it and be like, okay, maybe there's some merit to that. Let me sort of investigate it and separate fact from fiction and incorporate something into my worldview. So I don't think Bitcoin is going to account for the value of all assets out there. I don't think that'll happen. But I think it will have a higher market cap than gold eventually. Really hard to pick a time frame. I don't think it matters. It doesn't matter to me personally. If it happens in 10 years or 50 years, I mean, why does it matter? It doesn't make a difference to me.
Right.
That's why I own both assets and so forth. Like earlier, I said that I want to minimize my energy liability. And like, I also want to minimize the necessity of being correct. Like, I don't want to have to be right in my theories. Like I want so that even if I'm wrong, life is still wonderful.
Yeah.
Like I don't want to like set myself up that I have to be right, because then you start arguing for things that don't make sense and you start lying to yourself and you become really tribal and it's unnecessary. So if like, I think the dollar is going to crash. I think fiat is going to hyperinflate. And that's why I have all the hard assets. But if I'm wrong and the dollar is still usable and civilization is still functioning, great. Hey, that's great. That's great. Happy with that outcome. Happy to be wrong. So if you think about what gold has done a periodic accounting of the base currency supply. So I forget what that's like now, 27 trillion or something like that, which is probably right around what gold is now. So yeah, so I would think that Bitcoin does that, no question. So if you say that Bitcoin measured in dollars reaches a market cap of 27 trillion, or for round numbers, let's pretend it's 21 trillion, that's $1 million Bitcoin.
Right.
$1 million of Bitcoin is a 21 trillion market cap. That's a low ball estimate for sure. No question. I don't know when, but for sure.
Yep.
And that's only like a 10x from where we currently are. And I don't think that's more than a decade away. I mean, maybe it is, but again, not that important. 10, 15 years maybe. But in terms of endgame's always tough because there is no end. Life is an infinite game, right? There is no final turn or final winner or final declaration. It's just, you get to keep playing as long as you want to keep playing and have the resources to keep playing. So yeah, I think Bitcoin is going to do really well in the long term. However, in the super, super, super long term, multiple centuries, I think that Bitcoin eventually will go to zero. And I know I'm not going to make a lot of friends saying that, but I think that's the truth, because in the long term, everything goes to its intrinsic value. And I would argue that Bitcoin's value is entirely extrinsic. It's entirely extrinsic. It's not intrinsic. That's also true of stocks and bonds. Basically, anything digital pretty much has zero intrinsic value. It's all extrinsic. And so in the long term, I think things reach their intrinsic value. So I also think gold in the long term will reach its intrinsic value, which is a lot lower than it currently is. So a lot of the price, a lot of the value we see in the marketplace includes a monetary premium. I think in the super, 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 super long term, that goes away. It's hard to imagine what causes it to go away, but in the long term, I think gold trades at its intrinsic value instead of currently where it trades extrinsic value. So I think gold in the super, super, super long term goes down, you might say, measured against other stuff. But over the short term, like over my life, I mean, gold is just going to go up. It's going to have the same kind of cycles that Bitcoin has. They look the exact same, like rounded bottoms with spiky rocket ship tops, and then down, rounded bottom and spiky rocket ship tops. So that's how gold and Bitcoin both trade the same way. Silver is similar, but with a lot more volatility within those moves. So yeah, in the short term, let's say the next 2 or 3 years, I think silver is the best of the three. I think silver is going to explode and absolutely melt people's faces off. I think it's going to catch a lot of Bitcoiners by surprise because they're going to think, wow, I thought only shitcoins could do that. Or maybe even Bitcoin. Like it's going to go up a lot. Like there's going to be a year where silver goes up 500% in a year, or like in a 12-month period, let's say. So silver is like very, very exciting. In the short term, like that's pretty much what I'm buying exclusively is silver. Okay, tiny bit of Bitcoin just because it came down so much. I had to get a little... But yeah, and then in sort of like the medium term, you might say like 5 years. I think that's sort of gold's sweet spot because of the new monetary system. And you go longer time frames than that. I prefer Bitcoin. So 10, 20, 30, 50 years. I like Bitcoin the best. It's the biggest part of my portfolio. But then when you start talking about centuries, that's when I think, okay, maybe something happens with Bitcoin and eventually it goes to zero. Now, that doesn't mean it's a scam. It doesn't mean it was a scam all along, a Ponzi scheme. No, none of that stuff. That's not what that means at all. And just because we're talking about it, people are going to say, well, what could cause that? And I'd say there's two ways that something like Bitcoin can go to zero, effectively like a protocol. Why would a protocol stop being adopted? There's really two ways. It can die from within and it can die from without. So if it dies from within, it looks a lot like the death of the US Constitution. It looks like there are founding fathers who will sacrifice our lives, our fortunes, our sacred honors. They'll die on this hill. Yep. Absolutely everything they'll sacrifice for it. We're living through that era of Bitcoin now. Like Satoshi, is probably still alive. Maybe it was Hal Finney. I don't think so, but all the founding fathers of Bitcoin are still alive. Let's just say that. In 100 years, that's not going to be the case. 150 years, 200 years, the founding fathers of Bitcoin will be the stuff of legend. They'll be talked about as in myth.
Books. Yeah.
The same way, the George Washingtons and the Thomas Jeffersons were talked about that way circa the year 1900. And the children and the grandchildren and the subsequent generations, they don't really know what their founding fathers fought for. They just enjoy the liberties. And it's easy to get complacent when that happens. And I think eventually that happens with Bitcoin, eventually. And the people running the full nodes, the people, having the debate, the core versus NOTs debates and the, big block versus little block debates, Bitcoin Cash, BSV, all these debates, the people having these debates, it becomes, Google and BlackRock are debating and all the individuals aren't even paying attention eventually. And so I don't know what you do about that. Like, I mean, you can just education, try to, teach your kids what you fought for, the importance of it, and teach them that they have to teach their kids. And you can hold on as long as you can. But eventually, if Bitcoin dies from within, it looks like that, where someone says, hey, I found a weak spot in this protocol and I can use its own rules to my own advantage. And I can make changes to the code, changes to whatever, whether that's, changing the cap of 21 million to something else. If that could change 150 years from now and, all the nodes are corporate nodes and they all just adopt the new thing and then they print themselves more coins. What's the you and the me of the world going to do? So I think it could die from within that way. That to me seems like the more likely scenario, and it's just kind of like an eventually thing. You can't really put a timeline on it, but sort of by feature or by virtue of what happens, it's like after we die. It's like after we die and we stop fighting. Right. So how does it die from without? Well, if you look at how anything stops being money throughout history, thousands of years of evidence, things have stopped being money when a better money is introduced. And so, silver in some societies, silver was the best money because they didn't really have gold nearby. But, as you get commerce and trade and civilizations meeting each other, they figure out, oh, gold, oh, this is cool. I think this is better. Gold starts being money held under mattresses. Silver circulates as a currency. And so that dynamic has happened many times throughout history when different civilizations meet. We could potentially see something like that between gold and Bitcoin. So what could cause gold to stop being money? Well, if a better money comes along, let's pretend it's Bitcoin for sake of argument. I think it probably is, but let's just pretend it is. So everyone hoards Bitcoin and they start spending their gold. And gold kind of acts like a currency, a little bit of a hot potato. It moves around a little bit and all the Bitcoin stays in the vaults, you might say. Okay, that's the type of thing that would cause gold to stop being money. Okay. Now, what would stop Bitcoin from being money? Again, a superior form of money gets introduced, and then the Bitcoin starts to circulate and be spent. I don't know what that looks like. It's got to be guaranteed built on a different technology that we don't have access to. It's not, a faster coin. It's not,
Hmm.
something that has zero energy to transact. It's got to be something, and this is a little paradoxical, but I kind of explain this in Hidden Secrets of Value. It's got to be something that's like slower and heavier and more energy intensive than Bitcoin, because that's what makes Bitcoin so secure and decentralized. That's what makes it good money. So if you want to be a better money, you have to be slower and heavier and more expensive to move around. I don't see anyone building that, and you'd probably have to build it on a different kind of technology that we don't even have as human beings right now. So that's, how does Bitcoin die in that scenario? It's like we have to encounter aliens or something, or get some crazy technological breakthrough. And if aliens arrive on Earth, I know this sounds ridiculous. If
Hmm.
aliens arrive on Earth with some superior technology and some superior form of money, we would probably adopt it, and we'd say, wow, that's way better than Bitcoin. We'd have to wrap our heads around it. We'd have to figure out why it's better. But if you look on planet Earth, what happens when you have a bunch of tribes sitting on an island, and then the Europeans come and they colonize? Well,
Right.
the tribe,
Right.
using seashells and feathers and coconuts and whatever they're using, they encounter Europeans who have silver or gold or something that's better. It's always it's the civilization that's traveling that has superior technology, including weapons, but also including money. And I would argue that it's actually having superior money allows you to develop superior technology,
Yeah.
and it allows you to travel. So if aliens ever came to Earth, guaranteed they're going to have superior money because they're going to have superior technology in every way. So I know that that's kind of like a weird thing,
I
but I
love
don't know.
it.
It's kind of fun to think about. Like I would love for that to happen. By the way, because if we encounter aliens, dude, if we encounter aliens and they have cool technologies, I don't care if all my Bitcoin is worthless. Like, come on, aliens! Like, let's grab a beer.
Oh
Tell me
man.
like what's going on, you know?
Oh man, that's incredible. That is a first, Alan. That is true. That's first on this podcast. It's the first I've heard any of that. I love it. But I do agree with you from that sense. And the only other thing I could think of Alan was the mining of Bitcoin, and then stabilizing grids and the cleaning up the environment. And again, there's so many things that will come from Bitcoin, but just cleaning up the environment, the flared gas, all these things, the utility actually of Bitcoin itself, which is really the most under talked about thing, or the undervalued thing about Bitcoin to most of the world, that and what it's doing for the environment actually, which is converse from what you hear in the media. That to me, to again, to your point, maybe Bitcoin again reverts back to that's the utility value of it someday, and that's what it is. So fascinating, absolutely fascinating.
It's an amazing incentive structure because
Mm-hmm.
like you have all these problems like, well, for sake of argument, let's pretend global warming is a problem and it's as much of a problem as they've been saying for years.
Right,
Let's just pretend. Fine.
right,
Sure would be nice to have some way to solve it aside from paying
right.
taxes to the government. Like, what's the government going to do with more money? They already have a printing press. How are they going to, if they haven't solved climate change with a printing press, paying taxes isn't going to help. So, anyways, there's that. Then there's all the the green energy projects that have been paid for with taxpayer dollars all over the world, where
Mm-hmm.
you build solar farms out in the middle of the desert, and then they didn't realize like, oh, we have no way of moving this electricity into the cities where people actually need it, right? It's too expensive or whatever. Windmills up on hills where nobody lives, it's killing a bunch of birds, it's ruining the ecosystem, and again they have to transport the energy. So there's all these money losing green projects that can actually be solved with Bitcoin, right?
Mm-hmm.
Bitcoin solves
Yeah.
the stranded energy problem. It
Yep.
solves the incentives of, if you're a 15-year-old kid in your mom's basement or the garage or something, and you want to develop some cool energy technology, you have an immediate way to monetize it,
Mm-hmm.
guaranteed. Because if you can generate energy cheaply, you can mine Bitcoin and then sell the Bitcoin to pay for more of your research. Guaranteed. Anywhere in the world, anybody can do that. Whereas historically, if you developed a cool technology, you had to like find a company to buy it from you. And usually what happens is a company buys it from you and then they shelve the patent because it's going to threaten their business model. So you have all these great innovations that have happened, countless innovations. It's not like I'm aware of all of them. I'm just aware of the
Mm-hmm.
pattern. And it's like all these great innovations, clean energy solutions that would be, solve climate change, be great for the environment, zero carbon, whatever it is. All these things that have been invented and then they get shelved because that's the incentive structure. Now with Bitcoin, anybody can create those new solutions and immediately monetize them. So that means we're actually going to see those technologies proliferate. and we're going to have clean energy solutions. So that's wonderful. That's a great world to live in. So yeah, to your point, Bitcoin is actually great for stabilizing the grid, for, you don't have to flare your methane gas, which I believe is 80 times more of a greenhouse gas than carbon dioxide. So like that's crazy when we should be talking about methane. But instead of just flaring it because there's nothing to do, you can actually harness it and mine Bitcoin. So it's win-win. It's win-win. The incentive structure is amazing. And I think Bitcoin is going to help a lot. And something I was thinking about recently is like with the advent of AI and all the data centers and so forth, and the insane amount of demand for energy, all these servers and AI models are going to put such a strain on the grid. It's going to cause blackouts. And I can tell you right now, they're going to blame it on Bitcoin. Oh, Bitcoin miners cause the grid to go out. It'll be the opposite 100%. Of the truth. Like Bitcoin will help stabilize the grid. It will prevent a lot of blackouts. And when blackouts do happen, it's going to be because of, Big Brother trying to spy on us and collect all of our data and analyze it with algorithms. So I think Bitcoin's great from every different angle. It's a wonderful incentive structure. And, they're going to lie about it in the media, but you just got to do your own research and stick to what you know, man. We're all just out here trying to do our best.
Right. We're just out here on this floating marble, man. That's right. It's wild. It's so funny you say both of those things, because those are the things that I just had in my head of, like, if global warming really was a problem, Bitcoin mining would be the biggest thing on earth, because it cleans all this stuff up. Like it's the only thing that we know of that can actually affect the change. And so in combination with what you just said as well, the AI, like what's not being said is just as damning as what is said, in the sense of, for 15 years, all we heard is Bitcoin boils the oceans. And then all of a sudden you notice like AI all of a sudden just like takes off, and it's something that big tech and governments can control people with. So like, oh, you don't hear one thing about boiling the oceans of Bitcoin, because we need all this energy for AI. So now it's good. So it's like, it's clown world, Alan. It's absolute clown world.
Yeah. Yeah. I saw an interview recently, and I didn't like dive into it. It was just like a 1-minute clip on Twitter. So maybe I got it out of context. Okay. I'll admit that, but it was Bill Gates. I think he was being interviewed by Andrew Ross Sorkin, but maybe I'm wrong. I think the guy who published 1929 recently, but anyways, so Bill Gates was saying something to the effect of, it turns out climate change isn't as big of a deal as we were saying. Right. And it's like, that's right. It's like, oh, really? It's like, yeah. Oh. And the idea, the theory is that, he's big onto AI and all this stuff. And it's going to be, he's just getting in front of what we were talking about here, which is that there are huge energy consumers. So, it's incredible. It's incredible. It's clown world, as you said.
It's clown world. There you go. That's the best way to wrap all this up. It's clown world. Alan's Hidden Secrets of Value. This is, make sure it's in the picture, Mike's book that came out a few years ago, which is a phenomenal book. If you want, again, just a quick, again, it's a small book, easy to read, incredible color pictures, everything. You can get it. It looks, it's amazing. And it really, the history of money, what's happening, gold bugs, silver bugs, Bitcoiners need to read it. And then check out Alan's series, like I said, Hidden Secrets of Value, Mike's series, Hidden Secrets of Money, that spanned years. That was what, 10 years he put that together. And you've been working on yours for the last year or two. So incredible stuff. Any parting shots? Where can people find you? Anything that we missed that you want to touch on?
Yeah, well, thank you so much for having me. Yeah, I guess I would orient people to Hidden Secrets of Value. That would be kind of the main place to go, at the Gold Silver YouTube channel, or you can go to goldsilver.com if you want to buy any gold or silver or find all these links. And if you want to follow me personally, Twitter is the place to do it, at Alan Hibbard. So pretty simple.
Amazing stuff, brother. Thanks so much, Alan. Appreciate you coming on, brother.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. This was awesome.
If you like that episode, then you're going to love the playlist we put together for you with our most recent podcast with the top Bitcoiners, sound money, liberty advocates in the world. Go check those out here. We'll see you inside. You're going to love them.